Culture isn't a buzzword, it's the heartbeat of every organization. And here's the thing, if your culture is weak, your business will struggle. Today, on this episode, we're diving deep into why company culture makes or breaks retention, leadership, and ultimately your bottom line. My guest today, I'm super excited to bring him on. His name is Enrique Acosta Gonzalez, a U.S. Navy veteran turned coach who has helped leaders transform toxic workplaces into thriving, purpose driven teams. Before I bring him on, my name is Shri, and I'm a social media manager who helps doctors and lawyers gain an edge online by helping them create content that connects. If you find that running a business and handling your social media is a juggling act you can't get a hold of, then schedule a call to see what it would be like to work together. But you know what? Let's get into this conversation. Enrique, let me ask you this question.
All right now.
So, what is your favorite thing to eat?
Lasagna.
I was thinking you were going to tell me something way different. I do love a good lasagna. When I was in college, I was known to be make a really good lasagna. So everybody else would bring the sides,
Right.
but the lasagna was me. So what do you like in your lasagna?
Yeah, I like all cheeses, right? Ricotta. You throw the cheeses in there, right? And a lot of Asiago and all of it. And the difference of my lasagna, the ones that I make, is that I infuse it with cheeses at every level, right? So that's the little secret to that one.
Do you do a bechamel sauce?
No, no, marinara is what I kind of use in general.
Okay, because like I know some people will do a bechamel that's like a creamy sauce with
Mhm.
the marinara plus the cheeses, and that's how they get that cheesy. But
Well,
I
I'm gonna have
just,
to try it.
but I want to say hi to Chandrea who's tuning in from YouTube. And so, if you have any questions along the way, whether you're listening to this live, the replay, or on the podcast, because this episode will be up tomorrow, definitely, drop them in the comments or reach out to Enrique. So, Enrique, you've had a fascinating journey from the U.S. Navy, which thank you for your service, to
Sure.
leadership strategy. What lessons from your military background do you carry into your what you do when you work with others?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest lesson is commitment to the execution of the mission.
Ooh.
And you're going to find that if you have a lot of problems in your corporation, I'm talking about outside of the military, it's the level of commitment to the execution of whatever mission that you have for your company. A lot of people say, oh, this guy or this gal over here, they've retired on, how we used to call it, retired on active duty, right? They're on the road program, meaning they their body's here but their mind's out there. And
Right.
so you will have the same thing show up in the corporations where people are more excited about what's going on outside of the corporation, and you just have a warm body from 9 to 5 cashing the check, and that's about all you're going to get from them.
Ooh. So, you know, you said something. You have warm bodies, people that
Mhm.
are coming in and then they're going out and then they're going out and coming in. And so when they get out into the real world, what are some things that you notice that is hard for them to get acclimated before they're like, okay, this is my new life?
Yeah, I'll tell you something that I had to struggle with, and I'm sure that any service member will have to struggle with when they come out into this real world, as you would call it, is that the level of accountability for leaders diminishes significantly. And we have a problem with that, right? Because we hold leaders accountable in the military. Now, you will have some stories and you will have some situations and even commands where that may not be the case. But for the majority, I would say for the majority, about 85% of commands run under the guise of accountability. And when I got out of the military, I saw that go away dramatically, and it rubbed me the wrong way,
Ooh.
to the point where I decided that I would not work under the poor leadership or the lack of accountability at a company. Uh, yeah, I know a company that wanted me to apply, and I said no because of what was going on with the leadership. Said, absolutely not.
Ooh. Now we're getting some questions in. We have one from Michael because the accountability is really important. I want to get to that, but before we do, I want to answer. I want to get Michael. Hey, Michael, thanks for tuning in. How would you describe your communication style throughout your life?
I would say it has morphed. My communication style is what we call in situational or situational, right? You have to know who you are communicating with and why you're communicating and the message that needs to land. And as a leader, you must know that not everybody receives communication the same. And
Mm.
so you have to be able to be a situational communicator. And that's what I think has happened with me throughout my career. In the military, it's easier to state things and have them happen. In the civilian world, you have to be a little more, I say, dynamic in your approach with people, because some people do like it straight. Most people don't appreciate it, right?
Mhm.
So you have to be able to. So yeah, I would say the ability to be situational in my delivery of how I communicate.
So I want to come back to the accountability
Mhm.
and the piece where you felt like, well, I don't like working with people who, they were one way in the military and different, but even in civilian, you've noticed, like, even if they don't have a military background, you're like, what happened to this accountability? So how do you communicate with someone who's not taking responsibility for their actions? What can you do? Because there are a lot of organizations where this person is where they are because they got promoted. How can you communicate to them like, hey, this isn't working? Like, you're not being responsible for your actions. What can we do?
Well, before I would communicate with them, I would definitely ask leadership what got them there.
Ooh.
A lot of times people are placed in situations that they did not ask for. And so if that leader is in a situation where he didn't ask or she didn't ask to be there, chances are their whole heart is not in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get those things pop up where they become problems for the workforce and the company. But I would ask leadership, hey, how did this person get here? And so I can understand, because I'm seeing some things that don't match well with a person in that position.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know, was it something that they strive for, or you guys just decided out of blue you're going to hire the best technician, right? Because that's what happens. And this person can't lead himself or herself. How in the world are they going to lead us? So
Mm.
ask questions. Get familiar with how that person got there. Shoot, I would just ask that person, is this something that you asked for, or what? Because you ain't doing it.
That's a really good question, even though it's like hard to ask, but
It is hard.
It is true because while working with other coaching others who were in middle management, they have expressed to me some of the people that got promoted because they had been there. Everybody else got left.
Yeah.
And then they came around and they were the only ones, but they weren't the best choice. And so nobody wants to ask, why didn't, why is this where your heart is? Is this what you want to do? So we've got in the house John, welcome, welcome, and Lisa. And Michael has another question for you.
Yeah.
Do you believe being extroverted makes a better leader than someone being introverted?
No. I believe being extroverted makes you louder. That's it. I've seen marvelous introverted leaders that run circles around a charismatic, extroverted person. Charisma is not a leadership trait. A lot of people say, "Oh no, you should have charisma." That doesn't equate to leadership. It just means that you know how to talk and you like to talk, and sometimes you like to talk and hear yourself. So, so you got to be careful, right? Now, I do believe that an introverted leader should learn to adapt some extroverted traits, right? You do have to get in front of people and speak. You do have to get in a group and direct. You're not going to do that from behind a desk somewhere, and you know, it's just not going to happen too well. But I have seen marvelous introverted leaders, and for those introverted leaders that just can't seem to get in that realm, get a good person that you trust that may have those skills, and get them to your hip and learn and also employ them. You don't have to be everything to everyone as a leader. You got a team, use them.
We've got Eric who says
Eric Coop, my boy.
introverted people can be just as charismatic and loud as anyone else, and that is very, very true. Um, i.e., is an energy orientation. I'm very outgoing at work, but I recharge by chilling at home in the evenings and staying home on the weekends. Hey, that sounds like me. I'm very much in the house. Now, I want to get into when someone tells you, oh, we have great culture, but then there's someone who's like, no, it actually isn't.
Mhm.
We need you to come and fix it.
Yeah.
What are your steps that you take when you walk into an environment and so you're hearing one thing from leadership, but then the team, the staff is telling you something different?
Yeah. So, number one, I like to make this distinction when we're talking about culture. Most people that say culture don't understand what culture is. They confuse it with habit, right? A company could be habitual in the way they do things. That's not culture. You just got bad habits, right? And so, or you may have good habits, right? Culture is something that is, it comes out of the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
A leader can't teach you culture. Culture, it's something that comes out of the workforce. And I wish leaders would understand that a little better, because they would not say, "Oh, the culture here is duh, 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 duh," and no one's doing that. Yeah, leaders that do that, they just name off things they would like to see, but it's not really permeating from the workforce. They should spend some time with the workforce and see what the true culture is, right? And then differentiate whether it's culture or habit, and then make adjustments as needed. Now, ask me that question again.
Ask you the same question
Mm-hmm.
again? Okay, so the same question is, leadership is saying that culture is great.
Mm-hmm.
but the team is saying, no, it's not. So I want you to come in and fix it.
Yeah.
So what is the first step you take when you come into the company in the organization to help them to help them with understanding what's the real culture?
Yeah. So I set two things up in motion. One is the finding out what leadership thinks culture is. The second thing is finding out from the workforce what the true culture is. And then finding the gap between the both. Because as I mentioned just earlier, typically people try to dictate culture, and that cannot be done. So there may be a disconnect or a void between what reality is, right? And also what the expected culture is. And then we can talk about both and set both sides right when it comes to culture.
We've got some conversation happening in the comments. And so Michael says, thanks for sharing, Enrique. I see a lot of people try to be PC, especially for us regular people. And then Michael also shared, I know a lot of people that love hearing themselves talk 24/7.
Good. Yeah.
And then John is sharing, as a leader, you get accountability from your people by being an example of accountability yourself. One of the hardest things as a leader is giving credit to your people when things go well and taking the blame when things go wrong. And then Eric is saying, I used to teach this at USNA. He
Naval
said,
Academy.
Woot. Oh, we have a question for you from Michael. Do you follow David Goggins, his way of life, having no excuses?
I do not follow David Goggins, although I know who he is. He's a fellow senior chief, as I was, although he is from the SEAL, community. Um, but I do agree that you should have a mentality of no excuses. Excuses are your way of wiggling out of responsibility. That's what that is. And so uh, I don't know how he puts it, right? Because I just said I don't follow him in that way. He's just a type of leader and a person that speaks that I don't really, pull to. But I do agree with that statement. The more excuses you make, the less action you take.
And action is actually what gets you to where you want to go. So if you're not
Right.
taking action, you're kind of stuck.
Yep.
So think about it. And then Eric is saying adherence to a set of procedures and regulations is definitely not a culture. You're absolutely right there. I see culture as the things that the organization tolerates. If people are backstabbers and that's how the organization acts, that's a culture. Teamwork is also a feature of culture. And I agree to that. I've worked in a 9 to 5 where it was okay for certain behaviors, while in other places, that's not the case. So I wanted to ask you, you know, you talk about building trust from the top down. What are some practical, everyday ways leaders can start demonstrating trustworthiness?
Start talking to people on the bottom. If you're always in the clouds, you'll never know what happens on earth, right? And in earth is what actually the work is happening, right? So on earth is happening there. And so leaders that stay in the ivory towers, they stay, in their offices, they stay just going to board meetings and leadership gatherings, and that's it. And they don't take the time to communicate with the workforce, you'll never be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And the workforce to tell you, right? A person that comes down, and I'm not talking about now you're always in the weeds, right? You're all in there. They don't want you there all the time, but they do want to see you coming through. Hey, I noticed that, you look sad. What's going on? Hey, you always chipper. What are you all happy about all the time? Yeah, get to know your folks, communicate, connect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most leaders fail to connect. And the leader that fails to connect is of no worth to the workforce.
Mm-hmm. I was taught by a mentor of mine. He was like, I can't get everywhere, but wherever I go, I try to remember something about the person when I was there. And maybe it had been a month ago, and I follow up now. And people understand you can't be everywhere, but
Yeah.
because you remember that small detail, they look at you differently. And that's something that I've carried with me whenever I talk to people, whether it's in sales, follow up, like, I see something and I'll reach out and I'll say, how's this going? Or how did that work out? That's a tip that I mean, something that I carry with me. And it was because of a mentor who told me. And I want to say thank you, John, for that comment about it was a great question. And then Eric is sharing Goggins is a beast regarding a no excuses mindset. I think it's entirely too easy to equate an explanation, basic accountability, as an excuse. When this happens, this is not inspiring to the organization. This is why my Navy mind defaults to the principle of forceful backup. So, I want to turn this into a question, kind of because Eric has just shared that. Is that something that you kind of bring into your trainings when you're talking about why certain things aren't happening in an organization?
Well, when it comes to basic accountability, no excuses, things of that nature, the leader must understand that excuses doesn't move the needle.
No.
It doesn't move it nowhere. Matter of fact, the more you are referred to as the owner or the regulator of excuses, right? The guy that always has them ready to give them out, the less impactful and the less inspiring you are. And no one follows a person that lacks inspiration, especially the one that lacks to give it to the workforce. And so if leaders are out there always making excuses, I don't want to be under them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the kind of person that I'll tell you, bro, you're always making excuses. So you either start coming up with some solutions as a leader or move out. Yeah, and I just kind of am like that, but not everybody can do that. I understand that. Not everybody is willing to do that because, oh man, I might lose my job. But someone has to do it. Or
Amen.
else you accept the excuses as what?
And that's just
As
the
the
way it goes.
culture.
That's the way
As
it
the
goes.
culture. Right. And so, like I was saying, some things are not culture and just accepted norms. And
I want to, because I wanted to get into that because I see this also when I work with clients, some medical clinics, some law offices, communication or lack thereof,
yeah.
feeling that someone didn't say something or that person didn't say something. So when it has been brought to, the owner, the leader, your communication isn't effective. Like we are missing things. How do you work with the leader to help them work on their communication?
Yeah, communication is something that can be taught, but I'll tell you what cannot be taught: having the heart to communicate. So, a lot of leaders will speak. They'll speak. They'll blurt out a bunch of words. And it doesn't move me. If a leader speaks and moves me, like I'm not talking about like like in my heart, I'm like, yep, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. Exactly right there. That is when communication does what it's supposed to do, which is to inspire someone to take action, right? That's what you want to do as a leader. And if your communication is not inspiring people to do the work that's related to the company and it's going to make the company thrive, then your communication is just blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of Transylvania, the cartoon. He goes, blah, 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 right? That's what and people laugh at you, right? You'll come in there, spout off some things, you'll move out, and people are like, yo, this idiot. What's wrong with this guy? That was why he even speak. They didn't even, move us here. So if I can get to the heart of the matter in the leader's communication, then I can teach him style. I can teach him ways. I can teach him delivery. I can teach him timing. But if his heart is not in it, I can't teach him nothing.
I have seen, because personally, I don't wish this upon anybody. Emails were sent, appointment was set. This is what we're doing on this day. I'm recording content that's 2 hours away at a clinic. I said, no patience. Somehow communication got disrupted. There were patients, and one team in particular was combative towards me. And I was like, I didn't sign up for this. And so I did communicate with the owner. I said, we're not doing this anymore. It should be fun to do do creating videos, doing the marketing for the clinic. I feel like, did I go about it the wrong way? I don't know. But what would you have suggested I do? Because I didn't want to say it at the moment, in front of him, because I knew it was stressful. I waited the next day.
Right.
Is that the best course of action? Like when you see this type of behavior, like, hey, if we set this up, this would be the best. Is it better to say it that day or the next day?
Well, my question to you was, did you get from the stakeholders their preferred method of communication?
It was email. Yes.
Okay. So who told you that?
I was told by all the people on the email.
Right.
The best way was email.
Okay. So if they communicated that the best way to communicate was email, and you communicated via email, and the message still did not land, there's two things that are going on. That was not their preferred way of communicating. Number one, right? They believed that was, but obviously it wasn't. Or their preferred way of communicating was inundated. And if 10 people are communicating with you at the same time, you're going to be like, hold up. I got 2 ears, but I can only listen to one of y'all at one time, right? So, and so that's how you can formulate the questions. Hey, because you always want to give it back. You guys said, and all agreed, that the preferred way of communicating was this. I just want to know how in the chain did my communication get lost? Was there something that maybe I didn't put that, exclamation point, very serious, very important, right? What was it about delivering to you in the preferred method and this still got off? What was it? Because something happened. right? And you always want to put it back where they can answer for that, because you can't tell me that you prefer for me to talk to you in Spanish, and then when I get to the spot, you talking to me in English, and I'm like, all right. I mean, I can talk both, but you have to be clear. And if you're not clear and ready to receive messages that are supposed to be important, then imagine your clients, imagine your those that are doing business with you, imagine your partners, investors, you name it. And
I was
so,
I
yeah,
was with you on that one where I was thinking, I am a partner. I don't work for them. They are a client of mine. So I was thinking in my head exactly what you just said. How is it like for everyone else in this ecosystem over here? Because
right.
if it was like this for me, I could just imagine how it is for the others. So I definitely want to get into these comments because they are dropping. Erica says, yes, know your people, lead by touring your spaces and talking with your sailors. That's how I was taught as an ensign.
Mhm.
Ensign, is that right?
Ensign.
Ensign. And it has served me well, even going on 4 years after retiring. And he also goes on, Eric, the Chiefs taught me that. John says, genuinely caring is the number one trust builder for people. People can feel that always.
Always.
Eric says, see lawyers. Eric also shares, my point is that when a leader, don't just cut them down when they
Yeah.
explain because it's an excuse. Allow them to present the solution. Let them tell the boss what they intend to do. This is basically command by negation. Let the troops blossom. Don't just cut them down until they're done. And then we have John who's saying, turning the chaos of the mind into order before you speak is a daily practice that gets better with time. And Eric says, sometimes it is best to have the hard conversations the next day. If you think emotion is driving you, wait. Oh, there was a lot of emotion. I was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
mad. I had to calm myself down. I was like, wait a minute.
And that's okay, because we're human, right? That's
Yeah.
okay. The thing is that in this case, it's business, right? So you don't want the human side to mess up your business, right? So you have to know that, hey, okay, and you can express that. Look, I'm disappointed. I truly am, but we got to get this done. So I'll put the disappointment aside. Let's get to this, to this thing, right? And then we can address tomorrow how this can be mitigated in the future, because you also want to give them something aside from the business to learn from, because somebody else is going to come behind them or behind you, right? Or you may have to do another project with them. You don't want to have to go through that pain again.
Mm-mm.
So it's okay to express your dismay and disappointment, and say, "Hey, I love to talk about this tomorrow when heads are a little clearer, mainly mine, but but I would love to talk about this so that it doesn't perpetuate from here on out." Right?
Absolutely. That's exactly the take I took. I was like,
Mhm.
we'll talk about it later. Because even he was the owner, he was a little upset too. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, it wasn't because of us. The team did that. So I want to get into a topic that has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but
Okay.
has everything to do with your podcast. So I want to make sure that everybody knows you can go ahead and vote. I'm dropping the link as we're talking onto all the platforms so that you can vote for Enrique. Can you tell us a little bit more about why we're voting for you?
Yeah. No. Well, first of all, thank you, Sri. I appreciate that. I know this is your show, but folks, I have a podcast. It's obviously I'm a Navy veteran, so it's a veteran podcast award. I'm up for the best Navy podcast of the year. I'm also up for the best educational and skills development podcast of the year. And just found out yesterday that they've extended the deadline till tomorrow because I guess some things are working, and now I'm eligible for the top veteran podcast of the year overall, and that is huge. So if you go to the link, there's a couple of steps that you have to validate your vote because they don't want fake votes and bot voting and stuff. So it is a little to go through, but 3 steps. And if you go to my LinkedIn, I actually put the instructions on there so it'll be easier. But I truly appreciate you, Tree, to allow me to say that. And for all of you that do take the time to vote, thank you so much. It means the world. And, it keeps our podcast going to serve the veteran community.
So while Enrique was talking, I just posted on your LinkedIn, but I went ahead and I got it on Facebook and my LinkedIn page. So that way you're catching this episode right now or the replay, you can vote. But if you are listening to the podcast, because the podcast drops at about 3:00 in the morning for Central Standard Time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it will allow you to vote, but we want to make sure we can get as many votes.
Oh, thank you.
And support Enrique because he is doing something amazing. I brought him on my other show, which was called Sip and Chat. And that was the first time we got to sit down and chat. And then I was on his podcast, which was such an honor. And I just want to say, you started this podcast, what, 3-4 years ago?
Well, 6 years in February. So, yeah. So February 2020 was when I actually initially started.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I started about April 2, 2020. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you, what has the podcast done for you? If somebody's thinking about starting a podcast, what would you say are things that it opened for you?
How about the world? It has opened the world for me. I have conversations with royalty today. I have conversations and text messages with Major League Baseball players. Where was that going to happen? Me sitting in Orlando working at a job doing, when was that going to happen? I'm talking to politicians. I'm talking to heads of states. I'm talking to actors and actresses. I'm talking the world. And that's as best as I can encapsulate that experience. Eric and I served on the same ship, but did not meet till we met at Podfest.
See, that's always
on the same ship.
I would say this: there's a lot of couples who meet and they went to the same school or same university or graduated the same time, and they didn't know each other until something brought them together.
And I met Eric's wife first because she was speaking at Podfest. So, and then he's in the back of the room and Navy. Okay, cool. Where are you, sir? Oh, Iwo Jima. And I'm like, no way. So there you go. It opens up the world in ways that you cannot imagine.
I agree to that. I will say this. I don't have Major League Baseball players, but this podcast has helped me to help others get confident on camera, has helped me to give a voice where people felt like the only way I can get on a podcast is if I have X number of followers or I've made this much money, or they're trying to sell me some services. And really and truthfully, I said, I just wanted to be a platform because that's how I started it. I wanted to be able to share my voice, build a community, because in 2020, and you know this, there was no one teaching you how to start a podcast. You really were on the cusp.
Everybody was hiding.
everybody was on the cuff. And imagine, you're asking guests. I started with 92 followers on Instagram. And I remember getting those people telling me, well, you don't have enough followers, or you don't have make enough money. I still to this day get that. But you know what? I say, you need to read some of my messages. The ones that tell me thank you for opening this door for me, giving me a chance to share my story. That's why I do this. And this is something, if you asked me 6 years ago if this was going to happen, I would tell you no, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Why would someone say that about my show? But that's the truth. Like you said, it opens doors. You get to meet the world. And in the middle of it, you might help somebody who's been listening to your podcast for years tell you you're the reason why I did this. So I want to ask you, have you, out of all these years,
Yeah.
what's the most memorable story you've gotten from one of your listeners?
Well, I'll tell you that in terms of listeners, and I'm going to throw this stat out there for people that are trying to start a podcast. It's been almost 6 years, February, I said. I don't have over 15,000 downloads in 6 years. For most people, that is dismal. But my podcast is impactful.
Mm-hmm.
The episodes, the guests, right? She was on there. Go look at her episode. When they come to speak, they are impactful. And that weighs way more than numbers. Now, impactful story. One that I remember vividly is that a person, after hearing the episode, totally changed their perspective in the way they were driving themselves at their company. They decided to leave based on the information and go somewhere else that they are plumb happy at. And sometimes fear grips us so bad that we'll stay and tolerate versus moving and thriving. And after an episode, hey, this changed my life. What more can you ask for? Right? And most of us, when we do these shows, you will ask us and we say, all I need is that one person that needed to hear that to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
15,000 downloads in 6 years. They'll say that's a crappy podcast. Ask the
Oh,
people, ask the people if it is. That life has changed. Yeah.
I don't have 15,000 downloads, let alone I started my podcast 3 years after I started my live streaming show. But you're right, it's about the impact.
Yeah.
When I bring on a guest, people know that it's going to be good. I don't know how many episodes ago this was, but I remember someone telling me, you're, watching you for a year, all the guests, hearing their stories has helped me start my business. One of my guests shared that because he shared his story, they decided that night they were not going to do something that was going to end of life.
Right.
They decided to keep going. And these are the things that a download doesn't tell you. So
Exactly.
my message to anybody thinking about starting a podcast, you can start a podcast, you can start a business, you can even start a nonprofit that you feel like, because there's something missing. And it will feel like nobody cares, but I'm telling you, the day you get someone who comes up to you, the last person on earth that you would ever think comes up to you, it will change your life. So I want to make sure everybody connects with you. So what are the best places to connect with you?
Yeah, the best and primal is LinkedIn, right? And you can go there. There's a link tree thing. You click it, and you'll see everything. After that, right? But LinkedIn is where I live and thrive, and love the people there, And so that's the best way.
And so, if you guys are listening to the podcast, watching the live show, watching the replay, if you have questions, don't be a stranger. Reach out to Enrique.
Yeah.
If you are looking to work on the leadership, there's some things, there's some things that need some work.
We all know it.
We all know it. We all know about that one person or that one behavior or something that needs to be changed, but you're too afraid to say it. Go ahead and hire Enrique. He's going to come in. He's going to help you out. He's going to make sure that you guys are better than where you are. And John is saying before the internet, if you were able to impact 1,000 people in your lifetime, you are a freaking rock star. You know what? That is true. Like, think about it.
That's right.
Before we had cell phones, how did we call each other besides the phone?
Yeah, and imagine what happened when we got the three-way. We were like rocking. We're like, we're high class now.
And then we got text messaging and it was like all over. We forget how to talk to people on the phone. So before we end for the night, I want to ask you, you started your business. What are some things you wish you knew before you started?
Well, so there's a lot that people in business wish they knew. But I'll sum it up in this way. Starting a business solo is a death wish. And this is what I mean by that. Have yourself a lawyer, have yourself an accountant, have yourself a CPA, and then have yourself a minister or a priest, right? Because in business, you'll need those. There are ways to get those without having to pay out immediately. And there are ways to get those on retainer. So consider that. It may be some money, but what you don't want to do is get caught in business without them.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost you way more. You may have to shut down and liquidate because you did something that you shouldn't have. And so if I were to say what's the most important, it would be that.
That's a words of wisdom. And definitely don't forget your faith. If you don't believe, if you believe in the universe, whatever it is, because you will be crying and praying all. Let's just say there is a constant communication.
There's the thing about business that will make you explore faith. Let's just say that.
If you didn't know about it, you will know about it when
Yep.
you. I just want to say thank you, Enrique, for taking time, sharing your stories, your tips. I want to thank all the audience just chiming in today. Thank you so much. And until the next live, which will be, I will let you guys know. Have a wonderful evening or morning. And then we have one more comment. I'm sure impacting thousands was just as easy. How many people showed up at the I Have a Dream speech? At least 250,000 in 1963. No social media, no help from MSM, but 250,000 came to listen to MLK, which is true. So until the next time, everybody, have a wonderful evening, morning, wherever you're tuning in. Mm-hmm. Bye, everybody.